Right, are we doing the pantomime horse thing again, or are we done with pantomime horses? I feel like it's part of the shtick now. We have to stick with it. So, should we get this pantomime horse of a podcast underway?
Let's do
Although,
it.
although I noticed that you're wearing the same shirt as me, so are we gonna coordinate outfits from now on? Is that
As
what we're gonna do?
always. We
Yes,
used to do
wouldn't you?
pink tie Tuesdays. Do you remember that back in the day?
I don't.
That was a random thing that happened by accident and then
That was just
spread.
you and Nigel, to be honest.
I
That
think
was just
so.
you.
And then
That was just you and the schools team and children, young people, and families. We did other things instead.
schools team. Yes, that's right. We were in school consulting with schools director in the Department for
Indeed,
Education. That's right. Yeah, good
indeed.
stuff. Good.
Anyway, that's ancient history. Let's
Morning.
talk about more modern stuff. Morning, right? What's on your list this week, Kieran?
Well, I got a couple of things to talk about. I want to talk about the Ealing Learning Partnership AI Alliance. So
I saw the picture. I saw the picture.
Yeah, LinkedIn picture. Yeah, they had a great big picture of me. It was quite very overwhelming. Um, that was good. So I talked a bit about that, and then I've got a few stories from the news and things. But here's the big thing that I wanted to say. I listened to last week's podcast, and we talk about Fable and how it was released yesterday. And I was like, talk about the pace of AI. So by the time I listened to it, it had been released and already pulled.
It'd been banned.
So I do want to talk a little bit about Fable and it's being pulled from the world.
Yeah, that's on my list too. Should we just start there and crack on? So yeah,
let's do that.
I only got to use it once, and the ones that I used it, I thought this is brilliant. And then the next thing, I get a message from you saying Trump's pulled it, and then there was all sorts of nonsense circulating about it's because of it found a jailbreak, which just seems like nonsense to me. It seems like politics. It's just like we're going to mess with Anthropic because they won't do the things that we want them to do. So I don't know what your take is.
Well, I read a thing that was quite interesting was someone saying, did Anthropic's marketing about blow up in their face? So their marketing saying like this is so powerful and it can hack every system. And also apparently the CEO of Anthropic has been publicly saying we need to regulate AI. And so suddenly the Americans have decided they have regulated it in the space of 3 seconds and it's banned. But I think, I mean, who knows exactly what's going on? And it's pulled for everybody, I believe, because what the US have actually said is non-US citizens are not allowed to use it, including non-US citizens living in the US. And that means Anthropic is unable to have a way of testing, of knowing that, validating that. So they've had to say they've just got to turn it off for everybody. So that's what they've done so far. But I think, I mean, for me, the bigger thing is the implications of, sovereign data is important. Everyone knows that stuff. We've long since said under GDPR, you have to process in the EU or UK unless you've got a particular contract and clarity and agreement with a particular US companies. So now I think that just comes right into the fore in such a bigger way. If literally your model could be pulled from underneath you. Do you think if they did that with ChatGPT and just said no one else, our business ends because we're model agnostic in that we can switch to a different model, but not securely yet. As soon as we can do it securely, we will be testing others. But at the moment, we are locked into what Microsoft make available within Azure OpenAI, and that is only ChatGPT models that are secure enough. So I think it is very concerning, and everybody should be. They could do that with Excel, or the whole Microsoft suite. Actually, no one's allowed it anymore.
Yeah, I read something similar, which was along the lines of what happens if they switch off Microsoft productivity suites across the world because they want everyone. I mean, other things will rise. There's no doubt about it. And obviously, there's lots of talk about the Chinese models coming through, etc. But again, it comes back to security and that whole piece about where's my data, who can see it, who's got access to it, how do I protect it, and you will probably, if you re-listen to our last week's podcast, you will know we were talking about doing on-prem secure models, testing those, and I think that was pertinent, wasn't it? It was prescient. Is that the correct word? So yeah, we need to talk to Big D about that and make sure that we're pressing ahead. I'm sure he's got his big new toy in the basement,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, we should.
loading it up as we speak. So yeah,
Yeah, we
the security
definitely.
thing is really interesting because I got into a conversation. I messed up this week. I had a big error this week.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, indeed. And I haven't told you about this, so this is me fessing up to you live, as it were. So yeah, I did. I was asked to do a demo of Knowledge Flow, bid writer, and so yeah, of course did, and and I did all the things that I would kind of normally do. I asked the customer or potential customer about what the problems they were facing, how they were doing bids, and really interesting person. They run two organisations, one in Spain, one in the UK, and they've got two different bid teams, one for public sector, one for private sector, and they are using ChatGPT and Claude for, but the free models, and they claim they're not putting any confidential information there. And I was like, oh yeah, are you sure about that?
Yeah, indeed.
Are you sure your teams are doing that? But anyway, they were something went wrong. When you're chatting to someone and something changes, and you just don't know what it is. And there was a comment along the lines of, I asked if this person understood what RAG AI was, and they said they did. So I didn't go into explain it. Don't want to patronize people. And in BidWriter, when it goes through and it checks the questions and then it answers the questions and then it produces a file which says, we couldn't answer this question because the information wasn't in the data. It needs human intervention.
Yeah.
And that's in what's called a markdown file. So I show the markdown file and I explained it was a markdown file, and they just snapped and sort of said, I know what a markdown file is. I was like, okay. And I was just like, it was really odd. And it's like, I wasn't trying to patronize them, but I've reflected on it quite a lot because I like to think I'm pretty good at holding a conversation with someone and chatting to them. But some things, and I don't know what it was. I don't know whether they felt I was patronizing them or something, or they just didn't like it, and that was just their way of like shutting the conversation down and saying, right, well, I don't like the product, and we're going to shut it down. So I swung from that to another customer who loves BidWriter, and we got into a very different conversation, which was along the lines of, and they kind of went through a cycle of, crikey, this is brilliant. Actually, it doesn't, and it's got us to 60%, it's got us to 80%. Actually, it hasn't done 100%. Why hasn't it done 100%? It's like, that's because you need to add in the other bits. Getting to 60% is the easy bit. That's the part that you take from your other data and your other information. But actually, to get it to 90% or to get it to 95%, that's not impossible. It's just hard work, and you've got to put the hard work in. I can't make the stuff up for you. You've got to bring that level of expertise and knowledge to the bid, and they were kind of disappointed. It was really, really a weird conversation. It's like, hang on a sec, you've already told me in the last 10 minutes that you're really grateful because it would have taken you 2 weeks to get to this point, and now you're complaining that it's not 100% ready. So really odd how people's kind of thinking about AI tools and how they work, what goes through their head is really interesting. So yeah,
And I think
there's a couple of BidWriter stories
well,
for you.
that's familiar. All of those things are familiar, frankly, because you do sometimes have those difficult sales meetings, which just doesn't work for some reason. And it's, as you say, it's very difficult to know why, particularly on Teams, when you can't sort of see people really and sort of know what they're doing and how engaged they are. But I think on the 60% thing, I mean, that is the mad stuff, in my opinion, because you think getting to even 60% in an answer is taken days away from you having to do it, which should and it's the hard bit, this first 60% as a human, thinking about how do I answer this question, what case studies should I bring to it. That's the bit most people find the most difficult of starting. So the fact that it's done that, I think, is part of it. And I agree entirely that if you want to get to 95%, and it can get to 95%, it really can, but it takes effort. And that effort is I think what the future of work looks like. And I really do think, I genuinely think that when you look what's going to happen to jobs, I think there's going to be loads and loads of senior people who will need to coordinate an AI agent, giving it access to the right data, keeping that data up to date, making sure it's up to date and it's right stuff, and tweaking and then the agents effectively what was a managerial task, probably managing a team of 5 people and checking their work and making sure you're delegating well, I think is going to be very much like you with an agent or many agents with a different approach. So I think people need to firstly understand it's worth a bit of effort, because once you've got the thing doing 95% answers, it will keep doing those for at least a while till model drift turns up and your data needs updating. But it's going to keep doing those consistently all the time. But it's not going to happen without people engaging. And we get so much feedback from people along the lines of, well, the tone isn't quite right, or it didn't quite answer it properly, and you're like, well, we can't do anything with that information. You need to tell us more specifically. And then we can get it to 95%, but it does require that iteration and feedback loop. And there is still that, as we've said before laughingly, is the thing I meet more often than not in sales calls will be, as the analogy I've used is I like, look at this amazing thing that makes toast for you and butters it, and you're like, yeah, but I like eggs on my toast, so unless it can do the eggs as well, it's completely useless to me. Like, well, not really. You could just do your eggs, and this will do the rest of it. But,
I tell you the other thing that, as you were talking, I kind of realised there was one other point in the conversation where things didn't go so well, and that was when I said a customer had used it and they got 100 out of 100 for the first part of a bid, and they said that's not possible. I was like, well, it is. I can prove it to you. I've got receipts. I can show you. And they were just there. And I think that was probably where it went wrong, was that kind of incredulity. I can't even speak it. I don't remember the coffee. Thanks very much for helping me out. Incredulity.
Yeah, you just move your lips, and I'll do lip syncing with you.
Brilliant. So like where I stick my arms through and we do the dancing thing at Christmas.
No, that is it's a tough one. Well, yeah, I've had those several times, very similar kind of things, and you never really know whether you're in a sparring competition with someone that has told their team they can do it. That sometimes happen, particularly if technical colleagues come.
Yes, indeed.
And there is a little bit of like, let's try and show you I know what I'm talking about, and how dare you talk down to me, which is a real challenge. So well, never mind. As you always say, you've got to kiss a lot of frogs. So there you go. Right. You've another frog kissed.
Right. Well, let me tell you very briefly about another frog kissing episode. So at the weekend, I was trapped in the car for 6.5 hours with Mrs. Watkins. And I say trapped because whenever I'm in the car with her, she's like, right, you can't escape. You're going to talk to me now forever.
You're going straight to the doghouse if she listens.
She's not listening. She's not there. She's not there. It's fine. Anyway, we got on to talking about AI, and she was talking about, well, of course we got on to talk about AI. I don't talk about anything else. And she was saying, I'm not really an AI denier. I just don't see how it's relevant to my job. And I'm politely thinking about ways I think it might be pertinent. And she said, the other thing that you don't realise, because you're steeped in this stuff, is there's a lot of fear out there about AI. And I was like, what? And she said, well, in the news, there's lots of talk about people losing their jobs. And, amongst my colleagues, there's a fear that you're going to come along and get AI to replace us all. I was like, that's really interesting, because that's not how I had seen it. I had definitely seen the whole piece about.
What's that?
I said, can you hear the dog barking? Hang on a minute.
Oh, I heard you. You got muted slightly. That'll be what that is. Let's put a timestamp on this, and you can edit it out.
Yeah, I've got it. 28:47. So yeah. She said, there's a lot of my colleagues are worried you're just going to use AI to replace all of our jobs. I was like, this is about augmenting their jobs, making people do better, be better, taking all the drudgery away, taking all the really boring stuff away. And she said, that's not how it comes across when you talk about it. I was like, I was really quite both shocked and surprised. And I've been thinking about this quite a lot. And we keep up with all the stuff that's going on the wires, and we keep up with the news. So and we're looking for the positive stuff, not the negative stuff. Lots of people in the mainstream media are obviously talking about some of the negative stuff. But our guru Nate D. Jones, I come back to him, and he talked about trying to keep up with AI news is bonkers. It's like you don't try and keep up with all the news in the world all of the time. It's more like the weather. you don't worry about the weather in countries that you're never going to visit. You look out the window or you get the weather forecast for later on, and you
Yeah,
use the bits that are useful to you, and you
yeah.
take the bits that are useful to you. So I thought it was a really interesting analogy about rather than kind of doom scrolling news and from around, because you could do that for all of your life. You could do
Yeah,
that with
indeed.
AI, but actually just
I find
take
it,
the bits that are useful to you.
and I agree with that as well. But I find the job losses thing is quite interesting because I'm quite dismissive of people fearful of AI because it might take their job. I'm pretty dismissive of it, and I think I'm dismissive of it because I just don't think it's true. I think it's going to change work, and I
Hmm.
think it's going to change work for the better because who wants to do the stuff that is, some of the agentic email inquiry
Yeah,
handlers we've got. Your job is to come in, look at an inbox, and deal with all of the inquiries in there, which most of which are just low-level nonsense, and some of which you really need to get involved with. Surely you'd rather do the stuff that's the interesting.
yeah,
I've got to get involved with this stuff and leave AI to do the other stuff. And that, I'm using that as an example for finance. I mean, the world of finance, half of the time is just looking down to find out who needs chasing and then drafting a chasing email. I mean, why
yeah.
not just do that, have that happen for you? So it's kind of, I find, yeah, I'm quite dismissive, but equally, yeah, it's interesting to hear that even Mrs. Watkins so close to what we're doing here and is still feels that. So maybe I should be less dismissive of it.
Or I should talk to her more often, which is possibly a
Possibly that's what you should do. There's some interesting
absolutely.
things though. In talking about the news of AI, there's some interesting things I picked up this week, which I think is interesting. As having said that word three times,
Yeah.
um, firstly, a Munich court has judged that the Google AI summary that it makes now when you search anything on Google and you get that text at the beginning is Google's and they have to stand behind it. And they can't
Ooh,
say that's AI and it might be wrong. That is their choice to put it there. And they've argued the Munich court judgment is that they're liable for it, which I think
interesting.
is very interesting in the kind of where do you have liability landing when things don't work
Yeah.
out, things go wrong. We talked about insurance and AI, didn't we, quite a few episodes ago, and that's kind of brings all that back to my mind. And then I read, which always amuses me when the consultancies do this, KPMG again, who they pulled a report about AI, about the future of AI, and that because 40 of the 45 case studies in it were all hallucinated and made up. So, so somebody had
We should get
getting it.
onto them and say we could create a rag for them so that it actually just pulls correct data from
Yeah,
their data RAM.
there you
That's
go. It sounds
brilliant.
like KPMG needs some education in AI. And I mean, it's interesting your point though, being clear about it is yes, if you build in a RAG, you don't get hallucinated data. Well, much less likely to. The um, interesting thing about that is I've had several conversations over the last week or two about website. You just gathering stuff from websites to feed the answer. Can't we just get the data? It is on websites, so let's go get it. And we've always shied away from it because it's just so untrustworthy. And even the really good tools and Perplexity I use quite a lot instead of Google, really. I'm very rarely on Google.
Mm.
I can't really remember the last time I Googled something. But on Perplexity, it is often wrong in its sources. Often, in fact, more often wrong than right. It will tag the source like our tools do, where we say this came from this document and it's this section, and ours are bang on accurate. In Perplexity, the world leader, arguably, in this space, nearly every time, if you look at the source attributed to a paragraph, it is nearly always incorrect and it's a clickable link and it takes you off to somewhere you're like, what the hell
Yeah.
am I doing here?
Yeah, no, I
So,
found that. I found that even just yesterday when I was using it for something. I clicked on the button and I was like, why is it taking me to this page? It's got
yeah,
nothing to do with the thing I just bloody
exactly.
looked at. Really
Because I
odd.
think the important test in AI, we're going to talk a little bit about this in a moment, aren't we, of AI accuracy. One of the important tests, if you're using any of the search tools, is to check the sources
Yeah.
to make sure
Oh
that
yeah.
you're getting trustworthy sources and not just looking at some Reddit thread or some rant on some weird blog post.
Did
So
this
it's
come up in your when you were at your event yesterday, where you had a massive picture of your head on a screen? You mentioned something about
what a good
I think
segue.
yeah, well, uh, uh, you mentioned something before about output judgments.
Yes, yeah.
So is that linked to what they were talking about as well?
Indeed. Well, good segue. So I was at the Ealing Learning Partnership AI Alliance, and this
Crikey.
is chaired by a head teacher, Hannah Widdowson, and she is really excellent. And in fact, she's in the shortlist, I think, for a silver head award from Pearson for Head Teacher of the Year. So she's really impressive, really, and she's a lovely, lovely lady as well, but just impressive. And then I was asked to. I was invited to come along and asked if I'd present an award, which is why I have that big picture of me on it. And I sat through and listened to 5 presentations before of what they've been doing over the last year in their AI research groups. And what they've done, I think, is really sensible, is that they've got a whole bunch of the Ealing schools together, and they've agreed together, what things will you look at, but not just look at it in the way most of our AI is judged, of like, I liked it, or I didn't like it, or yeah, it's half the job, whatever. They did a proper kind of research backed, let's look at our research hypotheses, let's then gather some baseline data, let's then do the thing and then recheck the data. So they've got some real evidence about pupil outcomes and SEND learners, and Ealing has a lot of EAL learners, that's English as an additional language. So obviously AIs can be really helpful there because it translates, which really helps, but also help to teach them English in ways that can be more supportive. So what they've done really sensibly is that collaborative effort, but also with that research methodology, means that their work is really useful for others to look at, and I hope that others will look at it. I really do hope it will. But one of the things that I really liked in there was the output assurance grid. That was the phrase that they use. And one of the other groups used a acronym of BRAIN, which I can't tell you what the acronym stands for, unfortunately, but it was the same concept of how do you judge an AI's output? Because it's difficult to judge. It's written persuasively always, isn't it? And can be hallucinated and entirely wrong, or indeed quite often just doesn't really say anything. It's kind of impressive sounding paragraph, and you get to the end and think, what have I learned? Nothing. So they've created this output assurance grid, which looks at different models, because they're using a lot of the free tools and some of the sort of like co-pilots and that kind of stuff. And then across a whole bunch of things that you need to be thinking about when you're reading the response. And they've got a grid matrix for sort of matching up in Google Gemini under hallucination. These are some of the known challenges, and you need to be looking at this stuff. So I think that's really sensible, as I said to them, because it is the problem we are all going to face as humans more and more. And I mean, that Google story of, well, you can't just say AI content might be wrong. That's just not an acceptable thing, is what Munich have said to Google. So, and I think that's where we're going to head more and more, because, I've seen hallucinations or incorrect parts in some of our tools occasionally, and you would only know if you were like a deep expert. And any other user, I remember it was one of our universities, and they had a number of days to make an extenuating circumstance claim, and it's 5. There's a thing that follows in the very next paragraph in that chunk of data that talks about 10 days for an appeal after a judgment, and it mixed that up. And I can see exactly how it did that, and very difficult. But you'd only know that if you knew that policy inside out. Otherwise, you're busy, send that off to a student. They then put in an extenuating circumstance claim at day 8. It's rejected. They fail their degree. Whatever. It's suddenly becomes a big problem. And I don't think it's acceptable to say, well, you should have checked.
Yeah.
I don't see how I just don't see how you can stand behind that. You can't check unless you read the policy, in which case, what's the point of using the AI?
Maybe we could contact your head teacher friend and or the Ealing Learning Alliance Partnership, or whatever they were called, I beg your pardon, I can't remember, and see if we could share some of that stuff, because I think that's really interesting. I think lots of people would be interested in it. Interesting. I'm using too many interestingly in this conversation. I got contacted by another head teacher this week and wanting to know about what we're doing with AI. So I think upping the information that we're putting out there in the community or for schools is probably a useful thing. We talked about this, 2 years ago. Why is nobody doing this stuff? It seems stuff seems to be moving. So
exactly.
we should try and help people find good sources wherever they can and help them make the right decisions for them.
Well, I will certainly put to Hannah and ask her if she wants our audience to be aware of her work. It will be, probably a bit too much for her to be put in front of such a large audience.
That's right. Especially if he's still snoring.
That's right. Yeah, we'd have to wake him up. Matt, we've got a guest on. Wake up.
Stop drooling again. Honestly, rubbish. Very good.
So what else have you been up to? Anything exciting this week? Have you been battling? No, nothing else. You've just been writing through bid writer.
Getting that stuff is important, isn't it? I mean, because so much depends on it, and it's the lifeblood of lots of organizations winning new business, and so getting it right for people is hard, but it's necessary. And so I have spent a lot of time with it. I've spent a lot of time with Donald, and we've been tweaking things and getting the output. But as I said, the thing that's actually consumed quite a lot of time is getting sensible answers out of the users, getting them to just, rather than just go, I don't like it. It's like, no, explain to me what it is you don't like, or why is this answer wrong, or and then just going, this is AI word salad slop. I get that. Okay, so what could we do instead? Where is it not pulling the relevant case studies? We can fix all of those things, but actually getting people to put the hard work in. And then on the other side, I've got two customers or potential customers. They're not actually customers, who are super enthusiastic. I mean, crikey, it's like having puppy dogs running around. It's hilarious. And could we put all of the data in the world into a RAG, and then we could just, hang on a minute, let's just
that's called the internet.
But it'd be secure, and then we could control it, and then we could interrogate it, and then we could get really good answers out of it. And yes, you could, but actually how you do that, it's not as just simple as you put 10,000 documents into a RAG and then let it go. It's how does it, I mean, it probably bears repeating, but your analogy of the kind of the library, this top P, top K. I'll let you tell this, explain it, because you do it better than I. But how many books do you bring back, and then which parts of those, which chapters in those books do you look at, and then how do you reference them? People, we're back into the magic bullets and unicorns of. It's interesting. So it's been quite a frustrating week in that kind of, I've been juggling those two ends of the spectrum of kind of and everything in between. So it's been nuts. What else have you been doing apart from bloody having your big old ugly mugs put on huge screens?
I have been hackathoning, which is always fun. So we put on, as you know, a AI hackathon for our customers, which is for them to choose what they would like to work on, them to bring the people that sort of involved in that process, and then we kind of work through workflow with them and where are the real laborious tasks and what data is involved, and then we can normally create very quickly something that can at least start that process. So we're doing that with qualification development, which is pretty challenging stuff. So that is creating a new qualification in response to either a demand in the market that you perceive if you're a university, or if you're an awarding body, equally a demand in the market. An exam board is an awarding body for anyone else, for our listener. And you or the government say, we're launching this new thing and we want some qualifications behind it. So really quite a complex process to sort of think through, how do you design, what are the learning outcomes that will deliver a person at the end of the qualification with the skills and knowledge and experience that they need in order to do the thing, whatever the thing is. So really interestingly, so with one of the teams, we built out this long workflow with them. I think it's the first time they've ever had that conversation for a start. And do you remember back in consulting days, I've always
Yeah,
said I think probably the highest value thing that I've done many, many times in my career is either workflow, business process mapping, or project planning, which is effectively the same thing, only looking to the future and sort of working through the questions and thinking through the steps needed to deliver a project. So
yeah,
I think that actually they got a hell of a lot out of that,
yeah,
without really any AI being involved yet. And I've then been working with the team here on building out the prompt and tools that will be needed to deliver their thing. And really interestingly, very much human in the loop. I mean, it's really important human in the loop on this stuff because you're designing a qualification and you can't just press a button and go, there it is. Secondly, it's regulated because qualifications are regulated. You need a really good audit trail. So you need to capture kind of everything that really happens along the process. So we've built a version in Knowledge Flow of a kind of what we would call a step-by-step function. So you effectively work with Knowledge Flow. It asks you, so you load the kind of whatever you've got, which is either your business case, because I think there's a gap in the market, or the government document that says here's the qualification or anything else. It then takes you on the journey towards completing the qualification, and takes a while. It's really interesting. You don't have to do it all in one go, of course. You can come back to it as often as you want. But in the RAG index, we've got all of the documents that they might need to draw information from. So that might be sector skills things, national occupational standard, the regulatory rules on designing regulations are in there, lots of skills strategies, all the kind of stuff that you might need to draw on is already there. So you literally, it will start off and take you through the process. And then it says to you, I think, here's the qual based on what you've uploaded. Here's who it's for. Am I right? Okay, these are the skills I can see in there. And by the way, I've had a look in the subject skills and the national occupational standards. So there's some more skills that might want to be in there. Do you agree? Do you want to change anything? Then it's like, let's theme those into groups so that we can start to design the kind of modules and units of the qualification and so on. And it's really interesting. And of course, and it can do all the mapping to skills. It can do the kind of, picking out all the kind of regulatory pieces you need to cover. And it does that, in seconds, all the bit that must be really frustrating
yeah,
if you were having to do this, going just wading through and checking off mapping, they call it. All that stuff happens instantly, leaving you to do the bit you want to do, which is like, oh, which order would I put these units in to deliver those skills? And maybe I should assess like this. It will still suggest all those things to you if you want it to, or you tell it, and then
yeah,
it just writes it up and adds the bits in all the admin. Brilliant.
yeah,
And it's all an audit trail at the end of that. You get your output, and you've got a full history of all the discussion you had, when you said no, when you said yes. So you've got the regulatory part captured as well, should you need it later. So I'm very impressed with it. I think it's an interesting approach, which is what much more human involved, human in the lead, I would say that is, which is the Gartner view, isn't it? So
yeah.
yeah, I had a great time doing all of that stuff, and
Oh,
I've got
cool.
to do a few more of those over the next couple of days because there's other angles we want to take that into.
Excellent. The switching on the reasoning thing was one of the things that helped with my bid writing piece with my colleagues. Just switching on the reasoning so they could see the kind of right, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm looking at. That really helped them think through some of that stuff. Because actually, I was looking at the wrong thing, or it's not making the right kind of. I can understand why it's now making those choices. So that observability, as been pointed out to us a lot, that observability piece and that audit piece. That who do you trust, and how can you show your receipts? Yeah, it's just super important, and that's not going away anytime soon. It's going to be a topic we come back to time and time again. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, the hackathon things are really interesting. Did you you didn't get out pieces of brown paper and post-it notes like you used to in the old days?
I did. I used a mural board for it.
The electronic version of brown paper.
Exactly. It's the better version because it's got a limitless end, and you can suddenly move everything up one when
Right,
the
that was a pain,
age-old problem. Project planning was always a problem because you always end up going, oh no, I haven't got enough space left, and I've cluttered everything here because the next 3 weeks are easy.
Yeah, funny,
But
funny.
they all asked for it afterwards, which was the giveaway that was the bit that they said, can you send us that workflow? And because
Yeah,
it was like, step by step through what happens, what decisions are needed, where's the data come from? It's a really useful thing for any team to do because
absolutely.
rarely do teams sit and actually work through that stuff. It's kind of taught to you almost tacitly when you join an organization. You don't rarely does someone set a workflow out and say, this is how we do it. And be like, right, can you do that thing for me? And eventually you work out that's part of a workflow. I
Yeah.
think that's so actually having that session is really good, and
Two
it's great
things,
for us.
two things flashing through my head were, one is interesting that it takes time, and people think, especially when AI is running, they like expect instant answers. It's like it's doing a lot of processing in the background. You've got to understand this is challenging. It would take you weeks, if not months, to do this. So, the fact that it's taking 3 minutes, stop complaining. And the second thing is, I can just see that being super useful for personalized learning. That whole kind of, I want to do. You've undoubtedly already thought of this with some of the people you're working with, but that whole kind of, I want to do a degree in underwater basket weaving with pottery and something else random. You just like, here it is, here's the modules, here's how they all fit together, here's how you create a qualification, here's who you need to teach. This is just everything from kind of which specialist rooms you need to be in. I remember that was always the timetabling challenges with schools. How do you get in? But I could just see that from a qualification, but a personalized learning perspective. There was something on the radio this morning about, should university places be limited to only to people who've got a GCSE in English? It's like, kind of, and there was somebody on saying I didn't have it and I've benefited from it, and I'm now 30 odd and I've got a really good job and I'm doing some important work with lots of different interesting people. But actually that whole kind of personalized learning around, I want to be able to do this skill.
Absolutely.
Really interesting.
Well, do you remember so we did a long time ago. So personally, I completely agree. We've pitched exactly that model to an executive business school, which didn't go anywhere. But the idea is, and the university that we're working with could do, the one I'm working with on Qual's could do this because they've got a module RAG index within Knowledge Flow, so all of their modules are in there.
Okay.
So they could like literally say, I want to weave together the modules to create this new thing, and it would know all the modules. It already has all the details on them. Could do it instantly. But the executive school they have a whole bunch of different things going on, some of which they know about, but no individual knows all of it because it's so much leading edge stuff and research. The idea that you fed that into a RAG index and then could create your own, particularly as an executive thing, which might be, I want to be I'm currently a director, I want to be a CEO, and I want to get the finance stuff and public speaking, whatever it is. There you go. There's your personalized set of things to work through, and I've had to think about the right order to do them in. Here it is. I think it's really interesting to be able to do. We can do that right now, but yeah, they didn't go forward with it yet. Maybe one day.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I think that I mean, I remember working in DFE. I say this on stage quite a lot to schools audiences. I remember being right at the beginning of DFE, and personalised learning was in the transforming secondary education white paper in 2001. And I remember even then thinking, what a load of tosh. You've got to remember all your students individually and give them all a personalised experience. Oh, by the way, you got 30 pupils in the class, so just do that, will you? And by the way, there's another different 30 coming in after that, by the way. So but just do the personalised stuff. Kind of nonsense. But AI does make it possible, which is what I think is very interesting, because it also can lower the reading age for various things. One of the things that came up yesterday was one of the people speaking was saying that they are teaching year 6, I can't remember, year 6 at the end of primary school boys phonics that they should have known in year 1, but they haven't. But he said, I've been using AI to write stories for them on whatever we do it on. What do you want to write now? And he's got like I think it's a Gemini model, so he's got a gem trained on the phonics stuff.
Nice.
And then he basically says, right, let's do it on Minecraft. Let's do a 120-word story. There it is, done. Let's read that. And so something that really presses their buttons, of course, engages them, and of course is giving them some of that stuff which they're very behind in their reading, and the results are very impressive. They have tracked, because they're in the AI Alliance. They have got the benchmark data, the baseline data, sorry, and know how it's improved.
Brilliant. Well, really you did personalised learning for your boy with his geography GCSE, where it answered questions in the style of Drake, and none of us knew who Drake was. I thought he was a buccaneering pirate type person from the Middle Ages. He was.
I did.
He beat the Spanish Armada after playing bulls. Turns out it was a different Drake entirely.
Different one, not the tobacco potato discovering version. Yeah, that's right.
I think that was Sir Walter Raleigh. You need a history rag.
Yeah, right. I haven't got room in my brain for all those things. I'm busy filling my brain with AI stuff.
Right.
I did create that for him, exactly. And that idea, and we had for one of the colleges, we did some experimentation around. So colleges have a particular problem, that there is a regulation, a law. Is it a law? Regulation? Don't know. If you have not got a grade 4 at GCSE English and Maths, then you need to resit. And colleges, given the kind of audience they tend to deal with, have thousands of students like that. And guess what happens is they sit back through the teaching of English in exactly the same way they failed last time. And guess what happens at the end of it? No big surprise, you fail again. And that goes round and round and round, and presumably it doesn't make you feel particularly confident and as awful for you as a human, I would have thought.
Yeah.
And so they were looking at, can they personalise the content more, make it more relevant, make it about rugby if that's your thing, and make it about if you're doing a psychology course or a bricklaying course, let's make the examples relevant to that rather than just the regular stuff that everybody else reads. So interesting and possible at the press of a button. That's the stuff. Once you've designed it, it's you can do that quite easily. So I hope there'll be more of that, because I think it will help out in all those spaces. On that GCSE thing, here's the weird thing, right? Because the way GCSE grading is done, there are always the same proportion of, unless awarding bodies make a submission and ask for a change, they're always the same sort of A or 9s, 9, 7 and 8s, or 7, 8, 9s even, and then go down. So it means that you always have the same number of people that are going to fail. And that made me think, hang on a minute, what's going on there then? And how does that work? That those ones that are then going to resit, do they displace some others that are definitely going to fail? How does that really? I was thinking that can't be. There's something odd in the maths there, I think.
Yeah, maybe somebody, maybe our audience could enlighten us onto how these things work when he wakes up.
Do write in to our PO Box 27. Do you remember mail? Do you remember post?
I still get post. It's mainly junk mail, is the honest truth. Although I've started getting things for, dear Neil, you're getting very old. Would you like to go on a bus trip to the Outer Hebrides, or you should be. Have you planned your will? I was like, hang on a minute.
Bus trip to the Outer Hebrides. You're going on holiday. Where are you off to? Anywhere fun?
We are going to Scotland, actually. Just to be absolutely clear, but we're not going on a coach trip.
A coach trip.
No. Mrs. Watkins has a very significant birthday coming up.
I saw,
Saturday. Yes. So yes, we're going away. Her sister is over from Australia. There are a whole lot of friends and family going. It's going to be awful. And I will have to medicate heavily with the usual fashion in order to get through it. But I will be on my best behaviour to avoid the doghouse again. That's next week. So you're going to need to find a guest.
You're not doing that to me again, are you?
You're gonna. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to.
I'm going to dial you up in Scotland, and you can join with your. Well, no,
we might have to change the day. No, we'd have to change the day because our regular day is a travel day, so I couldn't do that day. But yeah, all right. In fact, that's a really good excuse for me to get out and doing family activities. And Kieron, you're a genius. I always knew you were a good friend of mine. You just say, "Oh no, I'm going to talk to Kieron for the next hour." 3 hours. No, the next. I'm on all day.
Yeah. It's an all day. We're doing an all day podcast. Oh, God, our poor audience really would be asleep.
Yeah, he definitely would. Would.
On that note, shall we wrap up? And
probably should.
Yeah, let's.
So yes, I'm going to go and pack my bag. I will make sure that I have all of the goodies that I need to get me through next week. I've also made sure I've packed Mrs. Watkins' presents, or some of them. Some of them are too big to get in the car, so there's no space. Yeah. So I'll report back next week from Bonnie, Scotland. So yeah, all right, let's do that. I will arrange a time with you.
Nice one.
In the meantime, you have a good day, and I'll catch you later. Cheers, fella.
See ya. Bye-bye.